back to this episode of Unclear on tour. It's been a week or two. It's been a while. It's been a little bit longer for me than it has been for you, dear listener. And that's due to the magic of show business and recording and digital media. But it provides us with an interesting framework into which we're going to dive this episode. So if you've not been keeping up, if you have been keeping up, thank you. Thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for being a part of this journey. If you haven't been keeping up, and that's fine, come on in, all are welcome. But this is what's happened. I used to record this podcast in a different place, in my apartment in Rome. Now I'm not in that place. I'm in somebody else's apartment in Toronto. And I'm loving it. It's fantastic to be back. I arrived in one piece. And I've been here a little while and I've seen a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of my old friends, current friends. And it's been fantastic to see everybody and catch up and do lots of catching up. And, obviously it's been an interesting time for the last however long. And much of those COVID months and years I've spent outside of Toronto in Rome. So it's interesting to, you're talking about catching up on that aspect of your life, but of course it's woven into this thing that we all went through together. But, other people who have taken other life decisions and done other interesting things while I've been away. So it's been fantastic to catch up on babies and houses and work and bands and less monumental things but no less consequential things, changes that people have gone through, a life that people have lived, and it's fantastic. And so it's a real treat to see everybody. Feels like no time has passed, but of course time has passed, and that's the fun topic of conversation. And it's nice to dive into it. But what I find is interesting, maybe this happens for everyone who's doing that and giving the catch up and giving the information, but what I find interesting for myself, because it's me who's been away, it's me who's just come back, so people ask similar questions. Fair enough. What have you been up to? What are you doing? How's this part of your life? And so on. And so, and those are the headline news of your life, right? So you want to have those talking points prepared. And if you don't have them prepared, then you hone them over seeing people. Maybe you see two different groups in the same day sometimes, and you end up, these things come up, so you talk about them and you practice them in that way. And so the next time someone is like, oh, and how's your job, you sort of are like, oh, I answered this earlier with that guy. So that was pretty good. I nailed that recounting of my work trials and tribulations. So I'll just plagiarize myself, and I'll kind of give you a similar, if not the same, update. Obviously you're not just a machine just like pumping out pre-prepared responses. None of this is like necessarily practice, written down, scripted in advance, nor is it so robotic or uncaring as to just be like, oh, everyone's getting the same update and I don't care for these people and I'll just tell them what I told the last guy. But if someone asks about work, if someone asks about your love life, do you really have that divergent an answer to give between each person? I mean, maybe that's a silly question. Of course you do. Like, people have different styles of communicating. Of course you do. And you'd probably tell some people need to know some things about your love life and some people definitely don't. So obviously that's bollocks. But again, the headline items, right? You say them, you cover the same sort of ground. And so I kind of get into a weird space where I'm like, have I told you this already? And I truly can't remember. And with a lot of people, that's not necessarily a nice question to be asked. Like, have I told you this already implies like, I don't remember. I don't remember what you and I talk about. And again, it's like, well, I just have these pre-prepared notes. And I'm just going to tell you whatever. When it comes to this story that I'm telling you, you don't necessarily want to give people that impression, especially if they're your close friends, So, but still the confusion is there. I feel it. I'm really genuinely, although this isn't the impression that I want to give you, and I do care about you, and I care about the conversations we have with one another. The truth of the matter is, I've told so many people today about the story where my parents got COVID in a really funny way that I can't remember. I can't remember if I've told you. I can't remember if we've already talked it before now because, we're texting, we got WhatsApp, we got Messenger. Maybe I've mentioned it before now. Maybe you've heard it through someone else who was also there and I'm telling it as if it's just me. But in fact, this was one of the times you were together and so I'm like, stop me if you've heard this one before. But I never feel like I can just be like, hey, I don't know if I've said this to you. Because I feel like it would be embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. And I don't want to put that feeling on someone else. So like I say, that's going through my head as I'm telling some of these well-trodden stories. I'm talking the big stuff that everybody's going to ask and know about. And I think what makes that worse is what I'm doing right now, which is recording a podcast of whatever description you're going to give this podcast. You are welcome to describe it in your own terms, but nevertheless, I'm recording, and I'll take you back. Some suggested listening / watching is an episode I did before about why am I recording? What is the reason I'm sitting in front of a microphone? We established, you may remember, or I'm telling you for the first time, we established that we've got no idea. We're just doing it and living the dream and keen to find out the response. And so because there's a lot of people that I'm seeing for the first time in a while who have maybe given it a go, given an episode or two a go, given more than that a try, maybe they're a day one listener, I am exactly as I predicted in that episode and exactly as I said I was hopeful for. I've had feedback inebriated, intoxicated, and otherwise. That was the feedback I was hoping for in that previous episode, was drunken and potentially abrasive feedback. But so far, I'm pleased to say I've received sober feedback and generally encouraging feedback. And this is a direct message to you. If you're listening right now, if you're watching right now, and this is not your first time, and you've said something to me, to my face, good or bad or otherwise, and you felt ways, good or bad or otherwise, about this podcast, a genuine and heartfelt thank you. I still don't know why I'm doing it. I still don't know what there is to gain from listening or doing, but I'm doing it, and I appreciate you being here with me. honestly, it really warmed my heart to talk to some people and then being like, people I really wasn't expecting. So shout out you guys especially. Saying things like, oh yeah, I gave it a listen. Oh, I tried this one episode out. Something like that. That's really cool. And thank you very much. But here's the big caveat, right? Because inevitably a lot of this, what I'm talking on this podcast into this microphone is unscripted, is top of my head, or I guess is those past well traveled of some good stories, especially the time when my parents got COVID in a hilarious manner. You know, it's stuff that I want to say here and now, or it comes up to say here and now, as it is the stuff that I might want to talk to people about when I see them. For example, there was a couple of episodes ago, a few episodes ago, I shared some thoughts about being at home in the UK and gender binaries and pronoun question marks and how I personally feel and maybe how I can generally feel about those things. And those are topics that are obviously top of my mind. I wanted to talk about and get something off my chest, but also the hope was that I get to talk to someone IRL. And obviously the talking points, quote unquote, that I come into that episode with, that I come into that recording with, are probably going to be the same viewpoints I have if I talk to someone IRL. So, and again, I hope they are listening. Hello if you are. But I have had several conversations that have started with, oh, I listened to your podcast about gender binary and stuff, and I wanted to talk to you about this. And that, to me, is so fucking cool. I absolutely love that because, like, I don't know, being able to jump into the conversation in that way, people that I maybe have not been able to come to that topic with or haven't engaged with them about, here they are engaging with my stuff out of choice. Thank you. But now they're primed and ready. They want to actually talk about it to me in real life. And maybe we would have got there when we saw each other, but maybe we can just jump into it like this and they can respond instead to like some random point that I made. They're just like, oh, well, what about that part? Because I really reacted to that, and we can do like, you know, skip the build up, you know? And that's fantastic. I feel, certainly I feel strange because like, they have to sit through however long of me just monologuing before we get into an actual dialogue. So that, I mean, that's probably not that healthy when you start a quote unquote conversation in those terms. But another listener commented that, well, they were commenting on it, and I described what I'm doing here right now as a conversation, and he found that to be very interesting. And he's right to, because it's not true. It's a monologue. And conversations are necessarily more of a, you know, more of a relationship-based activity. At minimum, a dialogue. But the truth is that I do just sort of try to get to a place where I am talking from the top of my mind, from the heart that's on my sleeve, in the same way that I would in a conversation with someone. And so I'm feeling in the same mental state that I hope I would go into a conversation with. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But necessarily, of course, it doesn't become a conversation until someone replies. So I'm so grateful for the people that I was excited to see anyway, excited to catch up on their lives, excited to see them and tell them about my life, and I'm excited about the way they wanted to engage in a conversation based on my one-sided part one of conversation. So that's really fucking cool, is what I'm trying to say. But more relevant to what I was chatting about earlier with the deja vu of engaging with someone and catching up with someone and catching up with several people in very close proximity, is that when some of those stories have made their way into an episode and then you try to tell them IRL, you're like, the same feeling. It's like, wait, have I told you this before? And the truth is, of course, if they've watched the episode, then yes, vicariously, second-handedly. But of course, the truth behind that is that, no, I haven't told them before. But then I'm like, but maybe I have. Maybe it's an old enough story that I told them it last time I was here, or when we spoke over Zoom, or something like this, okay? And I truly don't know. And my memory's not great. And especially when I'm focused on the telling of the story, I can definitely get lost in the question mark of, but have I told you this story? So it is compounded by the podcasting, and that including similar anecdotes at least. Or in the case of those bigger topics, including similar talking points that I would jump off from and try to engage in. And yeah, I find it very disorientating. And I think that there's a general theme maybe with episodes at the moment of disorientation, disconnection. There are obviously negative sides to that. And it's obviously strange to feel a sense of disconnection, especially from the moment that you're currently in. When you're specifically trying to reconnect with someone who's dead in front of you that you haven't seen in a while. It's strange to kind of slip into a mode of like, just very intense, like deja vu, but deja several times vu. It's very like you become hyper aware of like, oh, I'm a little bit outside of my own body, hearing myself tell this story, looking at, my friend's reaction. Do they know this one? Am I boring them? Have they heard this one on my podcast? Did I text this to them in our shared WhatsApp thread? Were they there for it? Why am I worried about that? They'd probably just interrupt me if they knew it. All of these things are going through my head. So obviously that's ruining the storytelling itself. This is just who I am. As an anxious and overthinking person, I allow those thoughts to run rampant, and it can be a real danger that you kind of space out of the conversation and forget whether you've told the story or not, and just forget what the story is, and really drop out of the engagement in that way. So, I'm really trying to not get into those habits. I'm gonna let people tell me if I've told them this one before, and trust that they'll do that because they're grown-ups and they can do that, and I don't need to worry about that so much. And I think I'm trying to see the positive. If someone stops me and says, "Oh, I've heard this fucking story. You told it on your podcast," then I'm going to try and take that as a positive and say, "Well, at least you listened to my podcast." That's all we can take at this point in time. So that's what we're going to do. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you're enjoying my new environs. We got a lot more foliage, different camera setup. We've eschewed some of the gear from Rome, and most sad, of course, we've lost the chair. So I'm not lying back anymore, but I still think I look pretty great, surrounded by all of this greenery. That's the main sort of vibe I'm going for. And perhaps we can, hit the usual therapy tone, but augment it with we're on tour. We're living our best lives. Having a good time, embracing new things, new vibes, new energies, and new topics to discuss, new stories to tell, and maybe even some new listeners. So if you have been listening, and I do know you, and again, you've mentioned that to me, or you haven't, you've been humble about it, and you've tried to keep my ego in check. Thank you. And if you've listened this far, really, genuinely thank you. So if you have, drop something hilarious in the comments, make the algorithm twitch, give it a like, whatever. If you've made it this far, big love, big respect. And I'll catch up with you soon.